That night, my straight best friend surprised me in the locker room. Something so unexpected happened that the memory is permanently etched into my mind. It was just that powerful. It was about a month ago. A night that started like any other, or so I thought. I'd just finished an intense basketball practice, the kind that leaves your muscles aching but your thoughts perfectly clear. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly above the empty gym as I grabbed my water bottle and towel, ready to head for the showers. Almost everyone had left. But my best friend, Ryan, was still there, lingering like he often did. Ryan was the guy everyone wanted to be around. Tall, broad-shouldered, effortlessly cool. He carried this natural confidence that just drew people in. His laugh was infectious, his smile could disarm anyone, and his hazel eyes had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. We'd been inseparable since middle school. I was used to his teasing, his easy charm, his ability to turn a boring moment into something exciting. But lately, things had started to feel different. At least, they had for me. That night, as we walked toward the locker room, Ryan was his usual self. Cracking jokes, tossing his towel over his shoulder, replaying the game. "You've been holding out on me, man," he said, grinning as he nudged me with his elbow. "That shot you made in the third quarter? Pure magic." I just shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Just got lucky, I guess." "Yeah, right. You've got skills, and you know it," he smirked. For a heartbeat, his gaze held mine just a second longer than usual. My stomach did a complete flip, and I had to look away, focusing hard on the lockers ahead of us. The locker room was quiet, filled only with the low hum of the air conditioner. The familiar scent of sweat and body spray hung in the air. It was our routine. Ryan tossed his bag on the bench and pulled off his jersey, his muscles flexing with the motion. I busied myself with my own locker, trying desperately to keep my thoughts in check. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't ignore the way my heart would race whenever he was close. It was ridiculous, I told myself. He was my best friend. And he was straight. That was the beginning and the end of the story. Or so I thought. Ryan broke the silence as he rummaged through his bag. "Hey. You good? You've been kinda quiet lately." I hesitated, unsure what to say. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired." He gave me a look that saw right through me. "You've been tired all week. What's really going on?" "It's nothing," I said quickly, avoiding his eyes. He didn't let up. "Come on, man. We've known each other too long for that. If something's bothering you, just say it." I swallowed hard, my hands gripping the edge of my locker. How could I possibly explain what I was feeling without ruining everything? "It's not a big deal," I finally said, forcing a smile. "Just stuff on my mind." Ryan didn't look convinced, but he didn't push it. Instead, he just shrugged and headed for the showers, pulling his shirt over his head as he went. "Suit yourself. But if you want to talk, you know where to find me." I watched him go, my heart hammering against my ribs. Steam began to billow from the shower area, and I knew I needed to get a grip. This was Ryan. My best friend. Whatever I was feeling, I had to bury it deep. But then, it happened. "Hey," Ryan called out, his voice echoing off the tiles. "Can you grab me a towel? I forgot to bring one in here." I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Yeah. Sure." Grabbing a clean towel from the pile, I hesitated for a long moment before walking toward the showers. The sound of running water grew louder. The steam swirled around me, making the air feel thick and heavy. The shower door was slightly ajar, and I could see the blur of his silhouette through the foggy glass. My heart was pounding as I stepped closer, the towel clutched tightly in my hand. "Just leave it by the door," he said, his voice casual. But instead of leaving it, I just stood there. Rooted to the spot. The heat, the steam, the tension, it was all too much. I tried to shake it off, to remind myself that this was normal. We'd been in locker rooms together 100 times before. But this time, it felt completely different. Dude? You okay? Ryan's voice cut through my frantic thoughts. I realized I hadn't moved. Yeah. Sorry, I stammered, stepping closer and holding out the towel. The glass door slid open just enough for him to reach out. His hand, slick with water, brushed against mine. A jolt of electricity shot straight through me, and my breath hitched. Thanks, he said, but his tone was softer now. His gaze found mine through the steam, and for a long moment, neither of us moved. There was something new in his eyes, something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't his usual teasing grin or casual confidence. It was curious. Searching. You've been acting weird lately, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Is there something you're not telling me? I opened my mouth to answer, but the words died on my lips. The truth was right there, on the tip of my tongue, but I was terrified to set it free. And then, to my utter surprise, Ryan stepped out of the shower. The towel was draped loosely around his waist. His wet hair clung to his forehead, and droplets of water traced paths down his chest. Look, he said, his tone completely serious now. If something's going on, just tell me. You don't have to keep it to yourself. The tension in the air was palpable. Thick with every unspoken word hanging between us. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. I knew, in that moment, that whatever happened next would change everything. The air grew even heavier. Ryan stood there, water dripping from his hair, the towel resting on his hips. He was looking at me with an intensity one had never, ever seen before. All his casual ease was gone, replaced by something raw and serious. I tried to keep my eyes locked on his, but it was impossible not to see the way the light caught the water running down his chest, tracing the lines of his muscles. I swallowed hard, my knuckles white as I gripped the edge of the bench, waiting for what came next. I gripped the bench behind me for support, my knuckles turning white. Ryan, it's nothing. Seriously, I managed, my voice shaky and barely a whisper. He raised an eyebrow, his lips quirking into a half-smile, though the concern never left his eyes. You're a terrible liar. You know that, right? I opened my mouth to protest, but he held up a hand, stopping me. No, don't even try. I've known you way too long to buy whatever you're selling right now. My stomach twisted into knots as he took a step closer. The faint, clean scent of his body wash mixed with the steam from the shower. You're always so chill, he continued, his voice soft but insistent. But lately, you've been different. Distant. And I don't get it. Did I do something wrong? No, I said quickly, the word bursting out before I could stop it. You didn't do anything wrong. It's not you, I swear. Then what is it? He asked, taking another step closer. There was a new vulnerability in his tone now, a quiet plea for an answer I wasn't ready to give. I looked away, my pulse racing as I tried to find any words that wouldn't ruin everything. He was my best friend. My straight best friend. Telling him the truth would only make things painfully awkward, wouldn't it? But before I could form an excuse, Ryan sighed, running a hand through his wet hair. You're killing me here, man, he said, his voice laced with pure frustration. Just tell me what's going on. Whatever it is, I can handle it. I'm your best friend. I hesitated, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Every instinct screamed at me to stay quiet, to bury these feelings forever and just move on. But the look in his eyes, the genuine concern, the unwavering patience, made it impossible to lie. Taking a deep, shaky breath, I finally met his gaze. It's not you, Ryan, I said quietly, my voice trembling. It's me. His brow furrowed, confusion flickering across his face. What do you mean? I hesitated, my chest tightening as the weight of 1,000 unspoken words pressed down on me. I mean, I've been feeling things I shouldn't, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Ryan didn't say anything at first. His expression was completely unreadable. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating, and I braced myself for the rejection I was sure would come. But then, to my utter surprise, his lips twitched into a small, understanding smile. Feeling things you shouldn't, huh? He said, his tone light but not mocking. Care to elaborate? I stared at him, my mouth dry and my mind racing. Ryan, I like you, I said finally, the words tumbling out in a rushed, vulnerable confession. More than I should. And I know it's complicated, and I know you're straight, but I can't help it. The confession hung in the steamy air between us, raw and terrifyingly honest. I felt my cheeks burn with heat, and I couldn't believe I'd actually said it out loud. Ryan blinked, his expression shifting as he processed my words. You, like me, he repeated, his voice noticeably softer. Yes, I said, my voice a fragile whisper. I like you. A lot. And I've been trying so hard to hide it because I was so scared of messing us up. I trailed off, unable to finish, the weight of the moment crushing me. I couldn't even bring myself to look at him. But then Ryan did something I never, ever expected. He reached out, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. A simple, grounding touch. Hey, he said softly. It's okay. I looked up at him, startled by the profound gentleness in his voice. What? It's okay, he repeated, his lips curling into a small, reassuring smile. You're allowed to feel how you feel. And I'm not mad. If that's what you're worried about. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by sheer confusion. You're not mad? Why would I be mad? He asked, his tone genuinely curious. You're my best friend. And if you feel this way, well, it doesn't change the fact that I care about you. Deeply. My heart ached at his words, a powerful mixture of gratitude and longing swelling in my chest. I didn't want to make things weird, I said, my voice still trembling. Ryan chuckled softly, his hand giving my shoulder a gentle, comforting squeeze. Things were already weird, he said, his smile turning playful. But I think that's just how we roll. I couldn't help but laugh, a weak, breathy sound, and some of the unbearable tension in the air finally began to ease. But then he stepped closer again, his expression growing serious and incredibly sincere. You should have told me sooner, he said quietly. I don't ever want you to feel like you have to hide who you are from me. Especially not with me. I was scared, I admitted, the words finally freeing themselves. I was so scared of how you'd react. I was terrified of losing you. Ryan's eyes softened, and he shook his head with a firm, certain finality. You're not going to lose me, he said. I promise you that. The weight of his promise settled over me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe again. But then he did something that left me completely and utterly speechless. Ryan reached out, his hand brushing against mine before carefully, intentionally, intertwining our fingers. His skin was still warm from the shower. I don't know what this means, he said softly, his voice steady but open. Not yet. But I'm not opposed to figuring it out. My breath caught in my throat, my heart pounding as I looked into his eyes. Ryan, are you saying? I'm saying I care about you, he interrupted gently. And maybe there's more to this than I ever let myself realize. The honest vulnerability in his voice stole the air from my lungs, and I felt a surge of hope I hadn't dared to entertain. Could this be real? The silence in the locker room was thick, charged with a new energy. His fingers remained intertwined with mine, a connection that felt both comforting and electrifying. I searched his face, looking for any doubt, but found only calm openness. Ryan, I I began, my voice barely a whisper. You don't have to say this just to make me feel better. He shook his head, his thumb stroking a gentle, soothing pattern on the back of my hand. I'm not saying it to make you feel better, he replied, his gaze never leaving mine. I'm saying it because it's the truth. I don't have all the answers right now. But I know I care about you. And I'm not afraid to explore what that means. My heart raced, a dizzying mix of hope and disbelief. You're serious? Ryan smiled, that full, boyish, carefree grin I had loved for years, and it softened everything around us. Yeah, he said. I'm serious. I wouldn't say it if I wasn't. I was speechless. All I could do was stand there, my mind reeling, trying to process this impossible shift in our universe. Then Ryan stepped closer again. He let go of my hand only to rest his palm gently on my shoulder. Look, I get that this is a lot, he said softly. But we've been through everything together. You're my best friend. That is not going to change. So whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I want us to figure it out. Together. Okay? I nodded, my throat too tight with emotion to speak. Okay, I finally managed, the word thick with feeling. His smile widened, and he gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze before stepping back slightly. Good, he said, his tone lighter. Because honestly, I've been trying to figure out why I've been feeling so weird around you lately. I guess this explains it. I stared at him, my jaw going slack slightly. You've been feeling weird? I asked, my voice tinged with utter disbelief. Ryan chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck in that adorably nervous habit he'd had since we were kids. Yeah, he admitted. I mean, I didn't really know what it was. But I'd catch myself looking at you differently. Thinking about you more than I probably should. And I kept telling myself it was nothing. He trailed off, his gaze meeting mine again with stunning honesty. But it wasn't nothing. It was something. His confession left me breathless. A warm, glowing feeling spread through my chest, a feeling I had never dared to name before. For so long, I had been certain my feelings were a one-sided secret. But now, standing here with him, nothing would ever be the same again. Ryan, I said softly, my voice trembling with the weight of it all. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he replied, his tone incredibly gentle. I want to be honest with you. You've always been honest with me. I owe you the same. I nodded, my heart swelling with a gratitude so deep it felt like it might overflow. Thank you, I whispered. For being honest. For not freaking out. He grinned, his eyes sparkling with that familiar mischief I loved so much. Hey, he said. You know me. I'm unshakable. I couldn't help but laugh, a real, genuine laugh this time, and the beautiful, familiar sound of it cut through the remaining tension. But even as we shared that moment of levity, the air between us remained charged. There was an unspoken question hanging there, a new frontier we were both standing on the edge of. And then, as if pulled by some invisible force, Ryan stepped closer again. This time, there was no hesitation. He reached out, his hand brushing lightly against my arm before sliding down to take my hand in his once more. His grip was sure. I don't want to overthink this, he said quietly, his voice steady but soft. I just want to see where it goes. Is that okay? I swallowed hard, my heart pounding a hopeful, joyful rhythm. I looked down at our joined hands, then back up into his eyes, and found my answer. Yeah, I said, my voice finally steady, filled with a courage I found only in his gaze. That's more than okay. He smiled, a small, genuine, breathtaking smile that felt like a new beginning. My heart ached with how much I cared for him. And then, without any warning, he leaned in. His forehead rested lightly against mine, and his eyes searched mine, looking for any sign of doubt. For a moment, time seemed to stand completely still. The world outside the locker room faded away, leaving just the two of us in our own private space. I could feel the warmth of his breath on my skin, the steady beat of his heart so close to mine. It was exhilarating and terrifying, all at once. And then, he kissed me. The moment his lips met mine, it was like a switch flipped in my brain, silencing every doubt, every fear, every voice that said this was a mistake. His touch was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if he was giving me every chance to pull away. But when I leaned into him, my hands gripping his arms for support, he deepened the kiss. His movements grew more confident, more sure. It was everything I'd ever imagined, and so much more. The warmth of his skin, the softness of his lips, the way his hands settled on my waist as he pulled me closer. It all felt so natural. So right. Like this was exactly where I was always meant to be. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathing hard, Ryan rested his forehead against mine again, his eyes closed as he caught his breath. "Wow," he murmured, a small, breathless laugh escaping his lips. "That was amazing," I finished for him, my own voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, a wide, dazed grin spreading across his face as he opened his eyes to look at me. "Yeah. Amazing." We stood there for a moment longer, the silence between us filled with the sound of our breathing and the distant hum of the lights. And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that everything had changed. Whatever this was, whatever it would become, there was no going back. And the most incredible part? This was only the beginning. The air between us felt electric, charged with something unspoken yet undeniable. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something deeper, something neither of us fully understood but couldn't resist exploring. Ryan's hands slid down from my waist, resting lightly on my hips as his thumbs brushed over the fabric of my shirt. It was such a subtle gesture, but it sent a wave of warmth through me, making it impossible to think of anything else. I met his gaze, my breath catching at the soft intensity in his eyes. They were searching, looking for reassurance that this was what we both truly wanted. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice steady but carrying a touch of vulnerability that made my chest tighten. I nodded, swallowing hard. "Yeah," I managed, my voice barely audible. "Are you?" His lips quirked into a small smile, and he let out a quiet, genuine laugh. "I don't know," he admitted, his hands tightening slightly on my hips. "But I think that's okay." There was a moment of silence, the kind that felt heavy but not uncomfortable, as if the air itself was holding its breath. And then, as if on some unspoken agreement, we both moved at the same time. His lips found mine again, and this time, there was no hesitation. The kiss was deeper, more intense, and I felt myself melting into him. My hands found their way to his shoulders, holding on to him like he was my anchor. Ryan's hands slid up my back, his touch firm but gentle, and I shivered at the sensation, my heart racing. The weight of his body pressed against mine as he guided me backward until my back met the cool metal of the lockers. The contrast between the cold surface and the warmth of his touch was thrilling. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his chest rising and falling. "Tell me if this is too much," he said quietly, his voice low and steady. "I don't want to push you into anything you're not ready for." I shook my head, my fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. "You're not," I said, my voice trembling but certain. "I want this." His smile softened, and he leaned in again, his lips brushing against mine in a way that was both tender and full of feeling. His hands found their way to my waist, slipping under my shirt just enough to rest against my skin. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver down my spine, and I leaned into him, craving the closeness. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. The world outside faded away until there was nothing left but the two of us. His touch was careful, exploratory, as if he was memorizing the feel of me. My own hands moved instinctively, sliding up to tangle in his damp hair as I pulled him closer, unwilling to let the moment end. "Ryan," I murmured, my voice rough with emotion. "This is incredible." You deserve to feel incredible, he replied. The sheer sincerity in his voice made my chest ache, and a warmth spread through me that had everything to do with him and nothing to do with the heat of the moment. He slowly pulled back slightly, just enough to rest his forehead against mine again. His hands stayed on my waist, his thumbs tracing slow, soothing circles against my skin. I don't know what's happening right now, he admitted, his voice soft but steady. But I don't want it to stop. Me neither, I said, my breath catching as his gaze locked onto mine. I don't think I've ever wanted anything more. The intensity in his eyes deepened, and for a moment, I thought he might say something else. But instead, he leaned in again, his lips capturing mine in another kiss. This one was slower, more deliberate, filled with a quiet passion that made my chest feel tight with emotion. We stayed like that, pressed against each other, the cool lockers behind me a stark contrast to the warmth between us. The world outside had ceased to exist, leaving only the sound of our breathing and the hum of the lights. Ryan's hands still rested gently on my waist, his thumbs tracing soothing circles over my skin like he was trying to memorize this moment. His gaze searched mine, a soft, unspoken question lingering in his eyes. Are you okay? He asked again, his voice barely a whisper, yet filled with so much care. I am, I said, my voice just as soft. Are you? His lips quirked into a small, almost shy smile. Yeah, I think I am. But I'll admit, this isn't where I thought today was going to go. I let out a soft laugh, the tension easing slightly as I leaned my forehead against his. You and me both. There was a comfortable beat of silence. Ryan's expression turned thoughtful, his brows knitting together. I don't want to ruin this, he said finally, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in his eyes. I don't know what this means, or where we go from here, but I don't want this to be something we ever regret. I reached up, my fingers brushing lightly against his cheek. The gesture felt instinctive and right. I don't think I could ever regret this, I said, my voice trembling with honesty. You mean too much to me for that. Ryan closed his eyes for a moment, exhaling a breath that seemed to carry away his tension. You mean a lot to me, too, he said softly. More than I think I realized until now. His words settled over me like a warm blanket. For the first time, I truly let myself believe that this wasn't just a fleeting moment. This was something real. I think we've spent too much time overthinking things, I said, a small, hesitant smile tugging at my lips. Maybe we just need to stop worrying about what this means, and figure it out as we go. Ryan's smile widened, and he let out a quiet laugh, his forehead pressing lightly against mine again. You're probably right. You always are. I rolled my eyes, my smile turning playful despite the whirlwind of emotions. Don't get used to hearing that. He laughed again, the sound lighter this time, and the last of the tension between us seemed to melt away. For the first time since this all began, it felt like we could breathe. Like we were finding our footing in this beautiful, uncharted territory together. It had started. Ryan pulled back slightly, his breathing heavy as he rested his forehead against mine once more. We should probably stop, he said, though his hand stayed firmly on my back, holding me close. Yeah, I agreed, though neither of us made any move to step away. The space between us felt charged, like a magnet was pulling us back together no matter how much we tried to resist. Ryan chuckled softly, his hands sliding back down to my waist as he took a small, reluctant step back. This is going to take some getting used to. I nodded, my chest still heaving as I tried to catch my breath. Yeah. But I think it's worth it. His smile softened, and he reached up to brush a strand of hair from my forehead, his touch lingering just a little longer than necessary. So do I. The locker room suddenly felt smaller, the air between us heavy with the weight of everything that had just happened. And yet, there was a strange sense of peace in the moment, a quiet understanding that we didn't have to have all the answers right now. For a while, we just stood there. The silence between us was filled with unspoken promises and the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't clear where this would lead. But in that moment, none of it mattered. All that mattered was that we were here, together. And for the first time, it felt like everything was exactly as it should be. In the days that followed, everything felt different, yet somehow, beautifully the same. Ryan and I had always been close, but now there was this new layer to our connection, a quiet, unspoken acknowledgement of what had happened. It was as if the air between us had shifted, and every interaction carried a new, gentle weight. At first, I wasn't sure how to navigate this new dynamic. Part of me wanted to talk about it, to dissect every moment and figure out what it all meant. But another part, the larger part, was terrified of ruining whatever fragile, beautiful understanding we'd stumbled into. So, I kept quiet. And Ryan did, too. We fell into a strange, wonderful rhythm. We still hung out like we always did, spending hours playing video games, grabbing food, or just sitting around talking about nothing and everything. But now, there were these moments, small, fleeting touches, or lingering glances that hinted at something more. Like when Ryan's hand would brush against mine, and neither of us would pull away. Or when his gaze would linger on me just a little too long, a small, private smile tugging at his lips. It was confusing and exhilarating all at once. I found myself constantly wondering what he was thinking, what he wanted. Did he see this as just a one-time thing? A fluke born from a moment of vulnerability? Or was there something real between us, something worth exploring? I didn't have to wonder for long. One night, about a week after the locker room, Ryan showed up at my place unannounced. It wasn't unusual for him to drop by, but there was something about the way he stood in the doorway, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, a nervous energy radiating off him, that made my stomach flip. "Hey," he said, his voice soft as he glanced up at me. "Can we talk?" I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He didn't head for the couch like he usually did. Instead, he hovered near the door, his eyes darting around the room like he was searching for the right words. "I've been thinking," he started, his voice hesitant. "About us. About what happened." My heart pounded in my chest, and I forced myself to stay calm, to let him speak without jumping to conclusions. "I don't know what this is," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But I know I can't stop thinking about it. About you." I stared at him, my mind racing. "Ryan, He held up a hand, cutting me off. "Just let me finish, okay?" He took a deep breath, his gaze meeting mine with a new clarity. "I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out who I am, what I want. And honestly, I still don't have all the answers. But I know that when I'm with you, everything feels right. Like it just makes sense." His words hit me like a tidal wave, washing away every doubt and insecurity I'd been holding on to. "I feel the same way," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't want you to feel pressured, or—" "I don't," he interrupted, stepping closer. "This isn't about pressure or expectations. This is about me wanting to be honest with you. And with myself." He reached out, his hand brushing against mine, and the warmth of his touch sent a shiver down my spine. "I don't know where this will lead," he said, his voice steady now. "But I want to find out. With you." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, and I felt a genuine, hopeful smile break across my face. "I'd like that," I said, my voice trembling. "I'd like that a lot." Ryan's smile widened, and for the first time in days, I felt a true sense of calm settle over me. We didn't have all the answers, and there were still so many unknowns. But we were in this together. And that was enough. Over the next few weeks, we navigated this new chapter with cautious optimism. We didn't tell anyone, at least, not yet. It wasn't out of shame or fear, it was just something we wanted to figure out on our own, without the pressure of outside opinions. We spent more time together than ever, falling into a routine that felt both familiar and brand new. There were still moments of doubt, of course. Times when I worried that this was all too good to be true, or that Ryan would wake up one day and realize he'd made a mistake. But every time those thoughts crept in, he was there to reassure me, to remind me that this wasn't just some fleeting experiment. "I'm here," he'd say, his voice steady and certain. "I'm not going anywhere." And he wasn't. The intimacy between us deepened, not just physically, but emotionally as well. We talked about things we'd never talked about before, sharing our fears, our dreams, and everything in between. It was like we were discovering new sides of each other, layers we hadn't even known existed. One night, as we lay side by side on my couch, Ryan turned to me, his expression thoughtful and calm. "You know," he said, his voice quiet in the dim light, "I never thought I'd find myself here. But now that I am, I can't imagine being anywhere else." I smiled, my chest swelling with a warmth I'd never known before as I reached for his hand. "Me neither." And in that moment, I knew. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together. Because this wasn't just some impulsive decision or a fleeting attraction. This was something real. Something worth fighting for. This was us.